Hello, and welcome to the Stacking Dingers Show. I'm your host, Matthew, aka Sheep, aka Dark Sheep, and we are here at Stacking Dingers, your home for all things MLB, best ball, and we are kind of in a lull in the schedule of the year, uh, finishing up watching the playoffs, and something came across my radar the other day. Uh, and a certain person, Alec, we'll bring him on here. Alec and his dad kind of came on to my radar, Kevin. So welcome, Alec and Kevin.
Thank you, Matthew. We're glad to be here.
So yeah, if you didn't see it, Alec wrote up a fun little article about how you guys played fantasy sports together, and eventually how Kevin, how you managed to take down the seventh inning stretch contest this year.
Yes.
So first of all, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
We'll dive into that team a little bit later. But first off, Alex, sorry. I'll try not to do that too many times. I'm sure you're used to it. I guess first off, what made you decide to write that up, Alec?
Well, like I said in the article, it just had been years in the making of us taking swings at these type of contests and ultimately coming back thinking, well, we were like directionally accurate is kind of what people would call it nowadays. Like you had the idea in mind and you just picked the wrong team, or you picked the one-off, something like that, where you were so close to taking down that top prize, but for whatever the reason, it didn't all line up. And in this case, I had been trying to write articles for a few weeks to start a Substack going. And I was in Colorado during the finals for my dad, and I was just like, this guy's going to win it all. Like I could just see the writing on the wall for this. And like, obviously you feel that often, but in this case, especially with the first start of it, of him having Ohtani when everyone else had Judge, like that was the first lever where you were like, okay, like there's a clear path here. So I just like started writing without him winning yet. And then it all came together.
So the team pulled through. So you mentioned at the start of the article, kind of a history in your family at games and gambling and sports collecting. Kevin, goes back as far as your father too.
Yeah, we come from a long line of degenerates. It's kind of nice. Healthy degenerates, it's a good vice.
But like they'd play board games, I guess.
Yeah, my father and his brothers were Cutthroat, Monopoly, Parcheesi, and there was another game, Acquire, that I never played, but it was hours. Like they would sit down and play for 8 hours straight, and like the prize pool was like $5, and you would have thought it was like $5 million the way they played.
That's awesome. And then like collected sports cards and bobbleheads too.
Yeah, so at my sister's house, and I think at Alec's house now, there's probably every baseball card set, like Fleer from 82 to like 2000. And then I am the fortunate recipient that I have in the back there. I have about 600 bobbleheads that when my father passed away, I got to pack up and keep.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
I actually, here in Milwaukee, there's a National Bobblehead Hall of Fame and Museum. I don't know if you've heard of that, but
No.
they had hundreds and hundreds. So if you ever need to offload some of them, they might need some of them.
We might have to make a trip.
I know personally, like when we go as a family to a game and get like 4 of the same bobblehead now, it's like, what are we going to do with one of these, much less 4 of the same one?
Now, my father's, just to let you know, give you a picture of my father. His eBay number was 3 digits. So he was one of the first, 1,000 people on eBay. He didn't buy stock in it, but he went on first and he got all these bobbleheads.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, just that that drive to obsess over something, that the same thing that we do in these games. It's just like people have had that for forever. At one point, it was
just to piggyback on it, Matthew, when I would walk into my grandmother and grandfather's house, there was bobbleheads literally just lined up 3 rows in every single room of the house. So you were going through the living room, through the dining room, and this was just normalized. So like I didn't think twice about this, but then when you would have multiple people that weren't in that house often, you could tell that they were just like, what is this place?
Yeah, and what did your grandma think?
She had no choice,
She's glad that he has them now.
Yes, that's why they're here now.
Because I know I have where I have all like my cards and stuff is a common area of discussion in my household.
my mother actually kept the plates. He would get all the plates, like the Joe DiMaggio plates or the Ted Williams plates. So she kept all the plates. I think she thought they were a little classier than the bobbleheads.
You should serve Thanksgiving dinner off of them.
Yeah.
But then fast forward a little bit, Kevin, you started in DFS pretty early. I think, Alec, you said 2012 in your article. So did you do other fantasy before that?
Oh, I was a big FanDuel guy. Yeah, I love FanDuel at the beginning. Dabbled in DraftKings, and then for a little while it got banned in New York. I don't know if you remember that. I forget what year it was. FanDuel got banned. So like then I found like some other, I don't remember the name of it. It was just like some bootleg website that I was playing DFS on.
So what was it like there at the start? So that predates my time getting into DFS even. So I'm interested to get you hear stories from the people that won big early, and that's kind of the perspective you get. So I'm interested to know, not to call you a loser, I don't mean to imply that, but what was your feeling on it at the start?
There was a definite shift at the beginning. Like when I first started playing, I would hit but not big, but a few $100. Like I remember hitting a Sunday football, $400 when the Jags were in London. I remember starting my Sunday off with like $1,000 win. It was nice. And then very quickly, like when it got popular, it got impossible to place. Like it went from I was contending to nowhere on the radar. It was like, I guess my 6 lines a week is not enough,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Alec, at some point you joined him and you kind of had a ritual for building lineups together. Tell me about that.
Well, yeah, it was fresh off of watching Moneyball, and we had seen Moneyball together, and walking out of that theater, I was like, I want to be Brad Pitt from Moneyball. Like that was just, that was just, it took over like every single waking thought at that point. It was an obsession really. And I got through that by playing fantasy sports. So even as early as middle school, I was playing a 6-man leagues, which are such jokes. I mean, there are just all-star players that are on the waiver wire in all sports. And you're just mixing and matching, trying to find a small edge in just a 6-player league. So I knew that in FanDuel, where you're having all of these guys like really grinding away over on their laptops in their basements, whatever their own ritual was, we were having our own where we were like, all right, this is the salary format. What do we like based on cost? Who do we think it doesn't matter what their costs are? They're just the guys you're going to need. And we would have these conversations throughout the day, whether it was baseball, basketball, or football. And in each sport, there were days that we had legit sweats. And then we were like, son of a bitch, like it happened again. Like the rug was just pulled out at the last second.
there are players I hate that no one else hates just because I chose them instead of choosing the correct guy. You know, like if I ever saw Miles Plumby, I'd probably slap him because I should have took Kelly Olynyk one night and I went with him, you know, at the $3,500 price point, and I killed my team.
That's funny. I mean, it's like as you play games, you know, throughout the years, like you feel like you're getting better at like being less passionate about the things you can't control, but there's always those things that come up that just stick with you.
Absolutely. I have a similar example that I had finished up playing a high school game, and then we had went over to Brennan and Carr, which is this roast beef spot in Brooklyn that is like when you go, you're going to have a good time. Like you're eating well, you're feeling well, and of course he like takes out his phone and is like, let's put in a few lineups. And that day I had drafted literally every single player in the lineup, Matthew, all of them homered, but my pitcher was Martin Perez, and he had -6 points, and it just absolutely derailed a top 10 finish, like out of nowhere.
You're going backwards, and you didn't think you could do that at that point. That's funny. But you know, you kind of tell by how you talk about it that you got tired of that aspect of it, and you know, I think you did something a lot of people have done at this point, and seen the, you know, the landscape of DFS be a certain thing that's slightly different than what you want, and you know, try other games, and specifically, you know, in this case, move over and try some best ball. So what was the first best ball thing that one of you guys tried?
I was watching Mason from the Flock Fantasy, who's obviously huge for football. That guy would have videos in my feed constantly talking about Underdog, but I wasn't ever participating in Underdog. I was just watching him just purely for the entertainment factor. And from him, I was then getting into all of these guys that were best ball specific YouTube channels, Pete Overzet, getting into Legendary Upside, ADP chasing, ship chasing, like all of these guys, Liam Murphy, like every single one of them that was dedicated to best ball. And I was like, yeah, there's something different about best ball that just is reeling me in than DFS. And I just started firing away at those small NFL contests early in May last year. And then I ended up, that's how I got this shirt from Underdog pretty recently. I ended up maxing out Best Ball Mania just because I was like, this is my first year. I feel like I know what I'm doing here, and beginner's luck or what, it ended up working out big time for me last year, a profitable year, and was able to reinvest this year.
And when did he suck you in, Kevin?
It was actually not the May that just passed. It was 2 Mays ago, and he lives down in Brooklyn. I'm in Jersey now, so I was going to the Met game, and it was early on in the year. It was like April, I think it was May, right? And I went to just have breakfast with him before we left, and he was sitting there with his laptop open. He's like, I'm drafting a team. I'm like, for what? What are you drafting a team for at 10 o'clock in the morning? You know? And he's like, for football. I'm like, it's May. He's like, oh, you got to see this. You could set an 8-hour clock. You could do this. And I was like, by the time I got to Citi Field, I had my phone out. I already started my first draft. I was sitting there trying to explain to my buddies. They thought I was crazy. I'm like, this is awesome. You know, it was good. You know?
Well, hopefully you got him his referral bonus. His $10 or whatever it is.
Yeah. He could have gave me Puka Nakua. That would have been nice that year. He kept that one for himself.
And then I think I saw, you know, you played some of the daily stuff too.
Yeah, no, I'm bad. You know, at night, if I'm watching a game, I'm like, or I'm going to a game, I'm like, I got to throw in the game. You know, like I told you, the hockey games are on the back, the Rangers. I'm a big Ranger fan. I'm like, yeah, no one picks Rangers. Let me throw a Ranger line in just to see what happens.
Yeah.
It makes it more interesting for me.
So I think I saw you got, was that an in-season hockey tournament too?
Yeah, that was during the playoffs. So
okay.
But it was a one-nighter, and there was only 2 games. It was only the East Coast, the East and the West games, and I grabbed a bunch of Rangers, and then I stacked a bunch of Dallas Stars, and it hit. It's nice.
Yeah, it's fun how, like, obviously you know the sport of hockey, but your instincts from DFS and other drafting, you knew, just you didn't have to know everything that night. You just knew, let me stack these teams up.
Yeah, that's it. I pull up the line combinations, and I'm like, all right, I got him. Let me get his wing. Let me get his center if I can, or I'll look at the power play line and say they'll be on the ice together here, and let's go for it.
Yeah, just some of that, like, instinct stuff that you develop as you play different sports and different games in this area. So yeah, let's get into baseball. Alec, you specifically said in your article that you had kind of fallen off baseball. Was there, what point in your life would you say you were the biggest into baseball?
Probably from Moneyball all the way up to 2018, 2019. I was huge into baseball. Baseball was my number one by far. I was playing it just at that point, middle school, high school. And I was just like, this is the sport that you could find an edge the most easily fantasy wise, I felt also. So I thought that it was the type of sport where you could just find that underrated stack or find some type of player that, especially in New York, you find so many, like, I hate to say it, but uneducated fans who are just like rah over the Yankees guys or rah over, just Lindor and Alonso right now. It's mostly a Yankee stereotype, but truthfully, you could notice that there are just so many players that no one else knows about. And I would exploit that in 6-mans when I was playing that early, 8, 10, and 12-man. And ultimately for baseball, I was in this huge league in 2019 that it was brought to my attention through UMass, where I went to college, that there was this huge league that this ex-general manager of the Angels was running. And he was basically selling a bunch of teams to us, where you would have their minor league teams as well as their major league teams. And he had on the table the Marlins, the Tigers, and the Phillies. And the Marlins and Tigers in 2019 were incredibly cheap organizations. And he's selling you that you get Casey Mize and you get Matt Manning. These are the Tigers of the future, right? Of course, it ends up being Scooble, and it has nothing to do with these guys whatsoever. But this is what this guy is selling at this, like, sport management meeting that I'm at. And I'm like, holy shit, like, this is my opportunity. I could be the general manager of the R Tigers. Like, let's go after this. And I text my dad, I called my mom, and I'm like, this is like a huge investment. How do you guys feel about this? And always, like, so supportive, just like, yeah, let's see what happens with this. And luckily it was only like a one down payment that took place, because after that, like, I was completely bought in. I was making great changes to the team. I'm still thrilled to see how well Santander and Ozuna were doing, because I made trades for them so quickly on in 2019. And, a few general managers were telling me that I was going like a little over my skis, getting overzealous making trades. And I was like, no, if I'm here to make some noise. Let's get after it. And ultimately what ended up happening was all of these guys that had more expensive teams, because it was all based on actual market value, which is part of why the Tigers were so cheap and the Marlins were so cheap. These guys that had bought the Yankees and Dodgers and such, they were spending $25,000, $30,000. Then they were spending more money on international free agent budget. So they're like, here, Tori, here's $5,000 so that I could have more international free agent money. Here's this amount of money so then I could have a higher priority in the Rule 5 draft. Like there were all of these different things that were creating money for the league. And then ultimately, who the hell knows what happened, because it just fell apart. And all of those guys that were deep in debt, they were like planning together to go after in some way to get what was rightfully theirs, because they weren't seeing their money dealt properly in this league that had so many contracts. I mean, I was signing contract after contract. Like it's not your typical just high stakes fantasy league. Like it felt like there was a huge backing behind it. And yet that collapsed, and that tormented me for about a year. And then, full circle, I introduced my dad to Underdog. He comes back at me about how the dinger is out and that I should be looking into this. And I was like, iffy. And then I just went full in again.
And ironically, I had no lines in the 7th inning stretch. And he called me and said, it's not going to fill. Maybe you should draft a few lines. And I took 7 lines right before it closed, and one of them was the winner.
Okay, let's do it. Let's check it out. I got share my screen here. All right, so this is the winner. First place, $20,000.
That is the winner.
So I'm interested to know. So first off, Alec, you hit the dinger up pretty heavy. What kind of research did you do? And then we'll compare that to the research Kevin did that actually won.
For the dinger, I mentioned that the first thing that I was doing was checking the bats projections. That got me on Adames quickly. There were other guys that I just agreed with the bat naturally. Vlad Guerrero Jr., Pete Alonso. Those were guys that Alonso was slightly ahead of where they had the ADP at, and Vlad Guerrero was very much ahead of ADP. So I was in on those guys to begin with. The name of your channel, Stacking Dingers, you're looking for guys that could just pop off in a week. It didn't make sense to me that those guys were undervalued. And then looking at Adames and other guys that were undervalued according to the bat helped me place accordingly. I didn't get into the dinger finals. I didn't get anywhere in the 7th inning stretch. That's the man of the hour.
All right. So, Kevin, before you fired off your 7 lines, obviously, you probably spent a lot of time thinking about what you're going to do.
Yeah.
What was your approach kind of casually attacking that contest?
So he told me about Adames, Willie Adames. And I was like, all right, I know who he is. I like him. And he gave me Jock Peterson. And he's like, no one's taking Jock Peterson. He's there forever, So I'm like, I've always been a Jock Peterson fan.
Yeah.
So all my lines, I think it was maybe 6 lines, not even 7. 5 out of the 6 had Adames and Peterson on it. And, on the day to advance, I had all of them were in 3rd place or 2nd place and had a shot. Like I could have had, for the first cut, I could have all 5 go or none go. And I had 1 go, and this was the one that went. But when I did my draft, basically after I saw where I was picking, and this one I got the number 1 pick. So I'm like, I'm taking Ohtani because, again, I'm a Met fan. I'm not taking Judge. Don't want to root for him. So I take Ohtani, and then in the little search box, I typed MIL for Milwaukee, and I checked off all the Brewers because I knew I was taking Adames. And then I typed in ARI for Arizona because I knew I was taking Jock Peterson, and I did it. And I think when it came back, I'm a big Jarrett Durant fan. I like center fielders like that. So he was available, and I saw him and Devers were both there. And I was like, I could have a nice Boston stack too on this team. Crazily, none of the Boston guys placed. They did nothing for me. You know, it was all the other guys. And then it was towards the end. No one was taking Padres. So I picked up once I took I don't know if it was Bogarts, whoever I got first, I typed in SD to see who was still there, and that's how I did it.
Yeah, so like essentially you were built into the stack. I'm gonna steal, Alec made a nice little graphic on the Substack that I sold too. But basically you had some targets and you stacked around it. And like the crazy thing here is like I think at this point, like neither Jake McCarthy or Eonis Suarez had really popped off. So Jacques, I think, is kind of consistent all season, scoring here and there, pretty well, popping homers. But those, like, you didn't like really. It didn't matter what those guys had been doing up to that point, even to you. You just, you saw the stacks and you built that way.
Yeah, the Suarez pick. Me and Alec used to be in just a home run pool where it basically was you picked 8 guys and then your top 5 guys, all that counted was home runs. And we lost one year because Suarez killed us. I think he hit like almost 40 home runs. And once I had Jock, there were a few Diamondbacks, and I scrolled past him because I'm like, all right, he's going to pay me back. Suarez is going to pay me back right now. And I took him, and I think he led the league in RBIs in the second half of the year. I could be wrong. He's definitely like top 3.
Yeah, he just turned it on. Like I've always been a big fan too, and I was ready to be out again. Like he was just abysmal at the start, and then kind of crazy because like there was discussion at certain points, like how long is he gonna be on the team? How is his roster spot okay? But then some injuries kind of kept him around, and he just turned it on.
Yeah, knock on wood. I do now have I do own a Gino Suarez T-shirt now that's upstairs, and you'll be happy to know I also own a Willie Adames T-shirt now.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I like that. Well, although he's not long for the Brewers.
Yeah.
Oh,
he had a great year.
Sorry, So
I just
pitching.
want to mention for a second, Matthew, that Duran did actually contribute to the finals. Devers did nothing though, and that was like the ebbs and flows of watching a roster week after week in the baseball playoffs is just so different than the NFL playoffs of one game and then you watch one slate and then you watch the Monday night slate and you're done. Like seeing Jock Peterson rake in the first rounds of the playoffs and then all of a sudden go a little ice cold in the finals, like all of that tension. I definitely think people should be playing baseball for the sweat alone. The sweat alone is wild.
Yeah, when I'm like making this content and stuff during draft season, like we always talk about like remember as you're drafting what it's like to be in the finals and like how do you want your team to look, and then as soon as you're a few weeks into draft season you're like all in your head again and you completely forget that experience of the playoffs and watching those guys have a week here and a week there.
It's the type of situation where you just want as many outs as possible, which ultimately is why I was automatically in on this team, where he like sent it over to me that this was the one that advanced. And I was like, the fact that you just have these outs where I don't know if they're going to release the data underdog for the 7th inning stretch, but I could guarantee that the amount of people that have Suarez alone, let alone the ones that have that type of Arizona stack, it's going to be a handful of lineups.
Yeah, well, I know for a fact because there was only 46 guys that made it to the final pod. So I went through all 46 teams, because I had 2 weeks to do it. And I was the only Gino Suarez team in there, so I felt kind of good. I was like, he's my boy.
Yeah, and he paid you back. He got you back. That's awesome. All right, so then what's what do you get? What's your plan for the future on Underdog? Obviously, you guys are even more hooked.
I just want to one more thing about that contest, just so all your viewers that are watching can go. You got to be effing kidding me with this guy. The night of the finals, Alec asked me, "Can McCarthy get into your top 10? Into your guys?" And I'm like, "Hold on, I'll do the math." And he's like, "What are you talking about? Doing the math?" I'm like, "I got to see what he did last week because I had screenshots of box score saved." And I'm doing the math in my head. And he goes, "Dad, you can click up on the top and click week 1, week 2. I was like, "You gotta be kidding me." I'm like, "I've been doing math for 12 weeks here."
Yeah, but you kept sharp,
Yeah, I'm old. I need to keep it going.
That's great. I mean, to be fair, that is not exactly advertised or you got to be clicking around to really find that. So,
yeah, thank you. It's like you sounded like when I used to talk to my grandma. Like, it's okay.
Hey, you've got a bigger win in baseball than me, so I can't knock it at all. But yeah, what's the plan for the future for you guys?
What do you got, Alec?
I definitely want to max the dinger. I did 120. That was just a time situation mostly. Had a better than average advancement rate, certainly better than NFL. Last year I was able to get 2 teams into the BBM 4 finals, but my advancement rate was terrible. For baseball, I was really zoned in on guys that I wanted to build my portfolio around. That was Adames, that was Vlad, Jack Flaherty, Jock. So I had some huge hits that were able to help make my advancement rate higher than average. So I want to dip into that more, get back on looking at projections for the bat. And I'm going to flirt around with making my own rankings for baseball, just because I'm wondering if I made my own rankings, if I'd be even higher on Adames, because it was a type of situation where I'm comfortable in baseball way more going over the expected of 8%, going over 2-3 times the field. In football, I rarely ever do that, just because I feel like the player pool is actually more condensed for viable options. But in baseball, there's just like so many players in the late rounds that could actually make a difference, where I think rankings and knowing that a guy is just completely mispriced is your time to draft exploitively.
Okay. And Kevin, are you gonna do some dinger teams this year, or?
I actually have 2 lines, or I got 3 lines that advanced in the pennant, the playoff baseball right now.
Yeah,
he's doing great.
Yeah, I had a little extra money, so I actually took like 20 lines in it, which was a lot for me. And it's a weird drafting playoffs because the better teams don't play 3 less games in the first round.
Yep.
Because they're on the bye.
Yeah.
And I was trying to find that sweet spot, but one of the lines I drafted was before the Mets got in, because they had to go in and everyone was laying off the Mets, and I'm a Met fan, so I have the Met lineup. Like, if they make the World Series, I have a full team and backups, and it advanced, and then I have one team that's dead. It's loaded with Houston and San Diego, but had enough to advance. Yeah. And then I have a Yankee team, because I had a team for pretty much every team I was trying to get.
Yep.
And the Yankee team got in because I actually grabbed Skubal at the end because no one was taking him. So I got some extra pitching points with that. And no one took Lindor for some reason.
Okay.
And I got like Lindor is my kicker on that team. He's my offshoot Met. So if the Yankees, if there's a Subway Series, I'll be very happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be able to fill a full team, which would be good.
This year was a bloodbath for that contest. I got 5 of my 38 in, and none of them are alive at all. It was all San Diego stuff that advanced for me.
Like right now, it's still pods of 6 in this round. And I went through the other 5 guys, and I'm like, I could advance even if the Mets go 6 games and don't make it. I'll probably still advance just because the other guys don't have the 3 pitches, So I'll get the pitching points. But the Mets got to advance.
Right. That's awesome. The moral of the story is, Kevin, you just have the innate understanding of these games, and you're succeeding.
No, he does. I mean, if the Mets beat the Dodgers, I fully expect to be writing another article, quite honestly, because how many guys prioritize the Mets when exactly what he's saying is that this contest was open early enough that you were debating if the Mets were making it in. I mean, I remember watching you and Chris talk about Arizona, and obviously we loved Arizona. We're watching Jock and Gino all the time, and that would have been a great team to have in this tournament as well if they were in the playoffs. So it's that dichotomy of knowing that there are teams that when they get hot, they'll stay hot and you could ride them. And right now it's looking awesome with the Mets.
Yeah, I definitely did not have the right teams this year, but yeah, that playoff contest is just so fun to draft.
Yeah, it is. It's addicting.
Yeah, and there's not like another. I don't know anywhere else that you can really play a nice playoff contest that is as interesting as that one. But
yeah, I only had one lineup in that just because I didn't realize it was going to fill as quickly as it did. Just thought that when it was like 98% full that I could end up getting 10 drafts under my belt just to have like a little equity in the contest. And I got one, and it was Yankees, Padres, wrong Padres. So it's out.
All right. Yeah. All right. Anything else? Yeah, obviously, Alec, you've got alecmcfeely.substack.com there. It's been there the whole time. I probably should have shouted it out with the actual website at the start, but, here we are now. I've seen you post some other articles there talking about some football concepts and just some general ideas that you have about playing the game. So definitely go check that out. And, I guess, Kevin, good luck on those playoff contests.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So appreciate you guys joining me tonight. Kind of a little bit different show for Stacking Dingers, but, it's fun to highlight the people and the stories of, this game that we kind of all love so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having us, Matthew.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It was fun.
All right. So we are, we're kind of at a low point in the content schedule, as I said, but starting to get.
That's what I'm here for. The low point of content. That's my niche.
I should probably not have, said that.
No, it's all right.
But yeah, so for those of you, we don't really have a super tight schedule going forward, but we're in the works for next draft season here at Stacking Dingers, and we got some ideas that we're working on behind the scenes. So we'll be seeing you when we see you. And so for Alec and Kevin and myself, have a good off season until we start drafting again.
Thanks, Matthew. You too.
Thank you.